What's up, everybody? Today, on episode number 3 of Seattle Sports Scene, we will be looking at what we saw from the Sounders' dramatic series victory in round 1 of the MLS playoffs against the Houston Dynamo. And with the Seahawks in their bye week, we took this as an opportunity to give our season grades for the Seahawks. Finally, we will look at what has been causing this recent slide from the Kraken. Stick around to the end to see if your question is answered in our listener question section and a quick overview of other sports in the Seattle area. Let's get into it.
A drive deep to right field, down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1.
Drops back. He's going to throw down the middle. He's got a man. The ball is caught.
Game over,
It is a
baby.
touchdown. The game is over.
With a shot blocked. Eberle in front for Schwartz. They score! Hey, hey! What do you say? Ground early. Now the cross out to Nor. What a save by Fry!
What's going on and how's it going, Seattle sports fans? We're back for another episode of the Seattle Sports Scene. Super excited to be back. As always, talking about all our favorite Seattle sports teams. Once again, it's been quite an eventful week for some teams, or all of our teams really, but got a couple of teams that have a little bit quieter weeks going on, but we're still excited to talk about them nonetheless. First up, I think on the list is talk about the Sounders, and our Sounders expert here, Seattle Sports Season, is going to get us started off on that. What's going on, man?
Yeah, a little bit of a nice week here, giving you guys 2 episodes this week. So if you haven't listened to our Mariners offseason episode, go ahead and go listen to that right now, or at the conclusion of this episode, go give that a listen, because we did a pretty big deep dive into the Mariners offseason. And so if you're a Mariners fan, I think you're definitely going to enjoy that episode. So go ahead and go check that out on
Absolutely.
our pages. But in terms of the Sounders, since we last recorded a regular episode, the Sounders took care of business and they swept the Houston Dynamo in the first round of the MLS Cup playoffs. Both games were pretty much the same game, if I'm going to be totally honest. Although they were a little bit different in ways that I'll talk about here. But both games, the Houston Dynamo ended up getting a red card middle of the second half. The red card in the first game was just like a generic red card. I mean, you never want to see red cards, obviously. It was a bit of a violent challenge, and I'd say it was deserved. The second one, I just complete stupid play on the side of the Houston player. He goes down, he commits a foul that's a pretty clear yellow. I don't know why he's angry about it. Ref comes over, shows him the yellow, and normally you just expect play to continue. However, the Houston player, as he's walking away, decides to turn around and spit right in the direction of the referee. And I don't know what he's thinking in that moment, because this is a playoff game. You're down 1-0. You're at home. Up until that point, Houston had been the far better team in the game, and they felt like they were on the verge of getting a goal to put them in front at home. And that play right there just completely shifted the momentum. So the first game, I'm just going to talk about briefly, since we didn't get a chance to record last time. I'm not going to go super in depth here, but I was really happy with what I saw from the Sounders in the first game. It was definitely really frustrating at times, because I thought that we easily could have scored a goal and not had to go to PKs in the first game. The first half, we looked like the far better team. Houston did probably have the best chance of the half, but Fry ultimately got the save on that opportunity. In the second half, we had a lot of great opportunities, 2 in the box shots from defenders that got blocked by Houston. And then Houston got their red card. There's a funny video that went around of Paul Rothrock waving goodbye to the Houston player as he gets sent off, which, what a baller. I'm glad he found his spot to play in Seattle, because he's been so impactful for this team. In both games, corners just continue to be an issue for the Sounders, and I don't know what it is, because sometimes it's just bad balls, just uncompetitive balls into the box. Sometimes they're really good balls, but just cannot find any Sounders players. Sounders in the first game did have an expected goals of just over 1. Houston was at 0.54, so the Sounders kind of destroyed in that game. In about the 8th minute of stoppage time, the Sounders had a possible handball attempt. They ended up saying that it went off of his chest and then his shoulder, which it was pretty close, but Sounders ended up going to the penalty shootout in the first game at home. The Sounders went 5 for 5. Houston goes 4 for 5, and the Sounders get their win. In that game, it was Rui Diaz, Rusnak, Jackson Reagan, Christian Roldan, and then finished it off from Alex Roldan. Second game, a very similar game, except kind of roles reversed, as they switch home teams, and the home team in both games seemed to have the momentum. So Houston definitely played a better game the second game, and you could see that in their expected goals. The Dynamo had an expected goals of 1.36 compared to the Sounders 0.92. When you watch the first game, I feel like it was frustration on the part of I felt like the Sounders should have scored. In this game, I felt like Houston should have scored. Both very gritty wins in different ways. I was really surprised the Sounders pulled out the second game. I was fully expected once they ruled out Jordan Morris and Albert Rusnak for this game, which is arguably your two most influential players on the field. I was like, it's going to be really tough on the road. Just get back to Seattle, get your players healthy, and take care of business. And I was really impressed by everybody that stepped up in the absence of those two. Obviously, having Rui Diaz to pull off the bench to play for Jordan Morris is super nice, but I thought Pedro De La Vega played another great game. And the Sounders end up, Christian Roldan puts in a goal in the late second half stages to put the Sounders up from 1-0 there. And from there, I thought we were just going to be able to waltz into the next round. Our defense is usually really stellar. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. The 10-man Houston Dynamo were able to get a goal back. It was on an own goal by Christian Roldan. So he ends up getting both of the goals on the score sheet for this game. Yeah, and so we go to penalties once again. Sounders, once again, they will go 7 for 7 and go 12 for 12 for penalties on the series, which is really the name of the game. Here, though, it's a completely different lineup of penalty takers, especially after we scored the goal. We subbed off a lot of our main offensive threats. So a lot of guys stepped up to convert penalties. Christian Roldan led it off, Jackson Reagan, Alex Roldan, and then Danny Leyva, Rui Diaz, Georgi Minongu, and then Obed Vargas finished it off. And a lot of these guys just stepped up and took great penalties. Vargas, I will say, he got lucky. It was not a great shot or a great penalty. It was kind of a weak run-up. He just kind of punts it into the ground. It's not hit with pace. The goalie actually gets a hand on it, and unluckily for Houston, luckily for the Sounders, it just kind of hits a bad spot on the grass and goes right into the goal. And the next shot, Stefan Fry is able to get the save. Overall, just fantastic stuff from the Sounders. I was really happy from what I saw. I was really happy that we were able to get the victory. Looking ahead, Vancouver actually beat LAFC 3-0 at home on Sunday night. So they're sending the series back Friday night in LA. I'm really intrigued to see how the game goes tomorrow because honestly, Vancouver played very competitively in the first game. They lost 2-1 in LA. I think they were frustrated because they felt like they should have gotten a second goal in that game. And then they came out and they manhandled LAFC 3-0. They had more chances. They looked dangerous. LAFC looked frustrated. People don't do that to LAFC very often. And so it would be incredible here if Vancouver's able to pull off the upset in LA tomorrow night, and then we get a bit of a Cascadia Cup showdown. So the situation here, basically, if Vancouver wins, it will be a one-game play-off game in Seattle, Sounders versus Whitecaps. And then if LAFC wins, the Sounders will travel to LA to take on LAFC. So obviously, would way rather play at home against Vancouver than have to travel on the road to a team that's had your number. But we'll go into more detail about the preview for the next series once we have the team and the opponent on the next episode. But other than that, I'm just looking forward to seeing what the Sounders can do. And if you're a Sounders fan, tune in tomorrow night to Vancouver versus LAFC because that obviously has a huge impact on the Sounders going forward. So, any thoughts on the Sounders before we kind of switch gears?
Well, great series sweep. Love to see that. Those PKs get your heart rate going, and they are absolutely scary. I had called you the night that they were in PKs because I was updating my ESPN app because I was out with some friends, and my ESPN app stopped working, and I was like, oh no, I don't know if we won. Did we win? Like, what's going on? So fortunately, you were able to give me the good news on the win. So I'm super excited to see how this team does against Vancouver or LAFC. Obviously, I would also prefer for it to not be LAFC because I'd like to be home. And that team, with the little soccer knowledge that I have, I know that team has the Sounders number, unfortunately. So would love to see an upset by Vancouver, but I would love to see the Sounders also not sleep on this Vancouver team, seeing as they upset a very difficult LAFC team if they would.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to see what happens tomorrow for that.
I forgot to mention as well in the penalty kick shootout, Stephen Fry actually had a save that they called back because he went off of his line early. And so just more drama to an already drama-filled game. Um, but yeah, obviously, even if LAFC loses to Vancouver, you definitely cannot sleep on Vancouver. It's also a team that kind of had your number a bit here in the regular season, if I'm not
Absolutely.
mistaken. Um,
Yep.
but looking at the Seahawks now, it's their bye week. So we thought that this would be a good time to kind of go through our mid-season grades for the Seahawks. Um, these grades are kind of based off of our expectations preseason. So these aren't. If you had higher expectations, even if you're having a good season, the grades are going to be harsher on you. So just take that into account. Obviously, some guys are playing incredible, but they also are held to an incredible standard. So let's just get into it. I'll start here introducing the quarterback, Geno Smith. Right now, he's at 68.1% on his completion percentage on the season. He has 2,560 yards passing, which is insane because he's basically on pace to maybe throw for 5,000 yards. Averaging 284.4 yards per game. And up until that, you think it's pretty good. And then you get to this where he has 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions through 9 games, and he has 4 fumbles. So obviously, so far, that's kind of been the name of the game for Geno Smith. Just the turnovers have been killer. I don't know. I was really torn on my grade for Geno because of the fact that he really isn't given a fair shot because of the state of this offensive line. Um, I I feel like because he wanted a contract extension in the offseason, I felt like he was warranting himself to be held to higher expectations. Because if you think you're good enough for that extra money, then you need to be held to the standard like you're going to be given a contract extension. So for that in mind, I give Gino a grade of a C. I think all things considered, he's having a good season. Obviously, there's been some pretty bad decisions that he's made that's resulted in some of the interceptions. Some of them have been unlucky, I will admit, like drops by wide receivers, just in and out of hands, unlucky bounces, but especially maybe it's just the Rams game still sitting fresh in my memory. It's just some of the decision making, especially against the good to great to elite tier defenses like we've seen in the last few weeks against the Bills and then the Rams, it just hasn't been there. Um, yeah, what is your grade so far this season for Geno Smith?
Yeah, so and just to clear up, kind of like define our terms almost, just to make sure everybody knows, we are grading A plus through F. A plus being outstanding, flawless gameplay, F being terrible performance, And if we give anyone a B minus, that's about like they're performing at what was expected for the year. So just want to put that out there in case anyone's like, oh, well, what are they grading on? So for me, I'm gonna start off with my grade for Gino, which is a C plus. I would like to see that completion percentage up a little bit, but I'm not gonna complain. With 68%, that's pretty darn good, especially for a quarterback in the NFL. Yards per game is good. I'm liking that average of 284 yards per game. Um, would love to see the touchdowns up. Absolutely, obviously, love to see the interceptions lower. The fumbles is what really hurts. This is through this point of the season, 4 fumbles is quite a lot of fumbles for a quarterback. And I understand you have some concerns about the O line, which we'll get into later. But as a quarterback who is the one who has your hand on the ball, that really has some question marks for how you're handling that ball in the pocket or on the run. So I give him a C plus. I think he's doing a little lower than what we expected, but I understand with O line issues with the pressure he has on him this season. He's not going to be flawless, and he's not going to be perfect, and he's not a superstar quarterback. So I give C plus for Gino.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of fans are feeling right now. It's just he was wanting that superstar extension, and I just don't think that's the level of quarterback that Geno Smith is. Kind of switching gears here, looking at the running backs. I chose to just grade on Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet together because Kenny McIntosh does have a few carries on the season, but not enough to really be able to get a sample size on him. So Ken Walker on the season has 398 yards, 4 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns on the ground. In addition to that, he has 217 receiving yards, a touchdown, and no fumbles. Zach Charbonnet has 213 yards, 3.5 yards per carry for 4 touchdowns. He has 189 receiving yards, a touchdown, also no fumbles. I think this was another one I had a hard time with because it's so heavily influenced by the offensive line. If you look at the quality of blocks that Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet are getting, I would expect them to have an even lower yards per carry than they're already pretty. Like 4 yards per carry is still about league average. I mean, it's still not very good. Like, and 3.5 yards per carry is not great at all. But I would say, based off of the blocks that you see them getting, I would expect that to be even worse. A lot of the times you see Ken Walker given the ball, and there's already a guy in his face that he has to make miss before he even gets to the line of scrimmage. And he does a really good job at turning those runs that would be a loss for a lot of other running backs into 2 to 3 yard gains where he bounces outside and he's just able to get to the sideline and gain 2 to 3 yards. So with that considered, I chose to give them a B. I think it's slightly better than they would be expected to perform given the scenario that they're in. There's also very little opportunities so far for them this season to actually get in rhythm. But I'm glad that both of them have also found a way to be productive in the past game. And the biggest thing here is they have been fantastic at not coughing up the ball. 0 fumbles between your 2 running backs halfway through the season. Obviously, you can't do any better than that. So, for all of that reasoning, I give Zach Charbonnet and Ken Walker a grade of a B so far. How about you?
Well, I had them actually written down here for a B minus, but you've kind of changed my mind here. I'm gonna go with a B as well, which isn't that much different, but I would give them a little bit above average. Grubb hasn't really favored the run game this season, as we talked about in the past. It's a lot of throwing, and when it is a lot of running, it's not the most ideal situations. No fumbles is fantastic. The touchdowns are pretty average for the positioning. Walker being the starting running back and Charbonnet being the backup or secondary rather. Um, I really think that this offense in general is being held back by the offensive line, but this running game in particular, you have 2 stellar quarterbacks in Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet who are not running backs who will go down easy. They will fight for yards after contact. They will fight for every single inch that they can get. And they are tough running backs. So, I think with a little bit of more opportunity for them, some more handoffs maybe, I think these running backs could really get going and really bump those stats up and just help this offense so much more. I think we saw that against the Rams, a lot more run game heavy, especially in the first quarter, and that helped open up the offense a little bit. So I'm gonna give him a B. That's gonna be my grading for the running back duo.
Okay. And I was going to mention this when I was talking about Geno Smith here, and it is still important as we look at the wide receivers, is that Geno Smith, people like to use the fact that he leads the league in receiving yards. I mean, passing yards to defend him. But when we're throwing the ball as much as we are, I'd expect Geno Smith to kind of be up there in the top 5 in passing yards just by sheer opportunities given to him. And so that was something that I really thought about while I was grading these wide receivers, because the wide receivers have been exceptional, I think, this year. The only thing I'm going to give them an A minus. The only thing really preventing me from giving them an A or an A plus was the fumbles, and a few key drops and that have led to interceptions. Obviously DK has a problem with fumbling the ball. We all know that. It's been a problem his whole career. JSN has been great. He's had a few bad drops. Same with Noah Fant has had some bad drops. But DK, other than that, has been amazing. JSN has been worth every bit of his first-round pick. Lockett continues to do what Tyler Lockett does every single year, which is just have a sneaky productive season. Like, I was going through the stats. I saw Tyler Lockett had 456 yards, and I was like, what the heck? How did Tyler Lockett have 456 yards? Because it feels like he almost is never targeted in this offense, and yet here he is coming in still on pace to almost have another 1,000-yard season. The crazy thing to me is that all three of these guys are basically on pace for an 1,000-yard season. DK and JSN are actually tied right now with 568 yards and 3 touchdowns for each of them. JSN does have 14 more targets and 15 more catches. So DK is just go for longer. JSN is really good at just a lot of short passes that he makes people miss and gets yards after the catch. But having 3 receivers that go over 1,000 yards would be insane. I think, and then looking at the tight ends for AJ Barner, Noah Fant, I think they've done their job. The unfortunate part for me is like watching the Washington offense last year, they involved their tight end a lot. And unfortunately, because of the quality of the offensive line, I feel like Fant and AJ Barner have both been forced to block more than Ryan Grubb would like to have them block, because he has to have them in there so that Geno Smith doesn't die. And so I think the same scenario, I think the running backs are having to block more than Ryan Grubb would like them to, because if you just leave 5 guys blocking a 4-man rush, they're getting blitzed and pressure almost instantly every single time. So for me, with all this in mind, I'm going to give the wide receivers and the tight ends an A minus to this point in the season.
Yeah, I've got them at a B minus for me. I don't disagree with anything that you said. They're performing about as I expected though, and that's why I'm giving them that grade. I'd love to see less fumbles, obviously. Tyler, per usual, sneaking up on everyone and putting incredible stats up for the season. I feel like every year I look at his stats after the season and I'm like, how is this man at 400 yards? And I swear I haven't seen him touch the ball more than like 4 times this year. But every year he does it. That's why he's the best. Love Tyler. JSN's starting to rise to the top in terms of recognition. And I think proving what he's capable of. We saw him make a little mistake at the beginning of the game of dropping a pass from Geno that ended up being intercepted, and he cleaned it up after that and was just the star of the game. Like, just played phenomenal. So love to see that from him. Excited to have DK back. I think this offense has missed having that deep ball threat that pulls the defense away from the middle of the field, away from the running backs, away from just... It opens up more opportunities if the defense is having to cover somebody who's constantly running deep or running very quick routes. I'm AJ Barner has been a pleasant surprise. 14 for 17 for 132 yards and a touchdown. I think he's been a solid second string tight end. Noah Fant, I'm a big fan of him, and he's having a good year as well. 27 for 32, 285 yards. Would love to see a touchdown from him, but I think you're right. I think the tight ends are not being passed to as much as Grubb wishes they would be, due to having to put up some blocks for Geno, since the O-line is just not great. So obviously I prefer to have my tight ends blocking for my quarterback so he's not getting killed out there by defensive linemen. But I would love to see some more involvement with the tight ends on the offensive plan, whether it be passes or whether it be opening up the run game, whatever it may be. So B- for the wide receiver and tight end core for me.
Yeah. The offensive line. PFF has them rated as the fourth worst offensive line in the league. PFF also has Stone Forsythe rated as the worst offensive lineman in the league. He's in fact the only offensive lineman that has 250 plus passing snaps and has a pressure rate of over 10% on those snaps. For me, it's an F. I don't like to give out Fs. But honestly, I don't see how this group could have been any worse to this point in the season. Geno Smith is the second highest, has a second highest pressure rate in the league, only behind CJ Stroud. And CJ Stroud is just incredible and is able to do a lot even though he's constantly pressured. Connor Williams, since the first few games of the season, has been a failure, honestly. I don't know how he just forgot how to snap the ball over the last few weeks. Just snaps over Geno's head to the side. They're low. And in my opinion, it's because he's trying to get to his block faster. The faster he snaps the ball, the faster he can get his hands up and block the defensive tackle in front of him. But even when he gets his hands up, he's getting destroyed off the line. Forsythe, like mentioned above, worst offensive lineman in the league. Charles Cross started out well. He's also beginning to struggle. So overall, I just don't see how this group could have played any worse than they currently have. So for me, it's an F.
Yeah, I gave him an F right away off the bat, but I actually did change it to a D- just to try to be a little bit positive. But it probably should be an F. Charles Cross has been pretty good. He's been acceptable throughout the whole year. If you put him on a normal, this isn't a situation where if you put him on a normal offensive line, it's going to be oh, he's the worst one. It's if you put him on a normal offensive line, he's going to do his job. He's going to do a good job, and he's done a pretty good job at that.
Yeah.
Connor Williams, up until about 2 weeks ago, was playing well also. His blocking was pretty good. His snaps were flawless. I'm not sure what happened in the last 2 weeks to him, but obviously that's kind of gone out the door, which fortunately snapping is something that can easily be coached and fixed and not too much of a panic issue. But I think you're right. I think he's trying to get to his block faster, which I can understand. Being the center, you want to be the person to get there faster. But my goodness, this offensive line makes me want to pull my eyeballs out. Every single time the ball is snapped, I'm not even watching the routes. I'm not watching Geno. I'm not watching the defense. I'm just watching each offensive lineman to see who's going to fall on their bum or who's going to let someone run right past him. Stone Forsythe had a couple of good moments in the season, but he's completely non-existent now, and as you said, is graded as the worst offensive lineman in the league right now. Anthony Bradford has been just terrible. I'm not going to go in depth. Everyone knows that the offensive line sucks. Let's move on. This is making me sad. Let's move on.
Switching to defense, going to the defensive line. I'm not going to go through all the stats, just a few notable ones. Draymond Jones has 3 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss, and a forced fumble. Leonard Williams has 4 tackles for a loss, 2.5 sacks. Jaron Reed has 3 tackles for a loss. Jonathan Hankins has 22 tackles for a loss. For me, it's a B-. I think they've performed about how I was expecting them to. There's been some games that have been really good, where I thought they've been extremely disruptive, and then there's also been games where I've watched where they've created virtually no pressure. They have been struggling in the run game. They get blocked caught up on blocks. They're unable to really get pressure into the backfield consistently on running downs. And for me, I just want to see a little bit more out of Leonard Williams. Um, I really, really liked what I saw from him in the Rams game, and I posted this on my account. I was like, Leonard Williams is actually like taking over this game right now, and I think that's the player that you want every single game if you're the Seahawks. That's the player that you paid for, that you traded for. Um, so I think if he just continues to do what he did in the Rams game, that's going to be a good step forward. Also, I just would love to see some more out of Byron Murphy. He was hurt for a little bit, but they did use a first round pick on him this last year, and I expect him to be a little bit more disruptive than he has been, as right now he only has half a sack and 2 tackles for a loss. So, overall, though, about what I expected out of the defensive line.
Yeah, I had high expectations for this D line, which were probably way too high. So I gave him a C plus, but it probably should be more like a B. It's obviously work in progress, this entire defense with Coach Mike and the defensive line especially. I do think a lot of players could be doing a little bit better. Obviously Byron Murphy, I know he's a rookie, but 20 tackles and half a sack through this many games, and I understand he's missed a few due to injury, but man, I hope that guy takes off soon. Hopefully the bye week will help him out for that, but love to at least see more tackles for loss, a sack or two even. Um, Leonard Williams has been awesome, and I do agree with you. He completely took over that Rams game. He's also some great veteran leadership on this team that I love to watch as he kind of works with the team through all that. So yeah, this D line has been just below what what I expected, and I'm hoping for some more, but yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, it's all upwards for this D line. Very talented players in the D line. So
Yeah, looking at the linebacking core, Derek Hall has been fantastic. He has 5 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery, plus a touchdown. Boyan Mafe has 4 sacks, 6 tackles for a loss, and a forced fumble. Tyrell Dodson leads the team in tackles with 71. He also has 2 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss, 2 pass deflections, and a forced fumble. And the newcomer Ernest Jones has 24 tackles in 2 games and a tackle for a loss. For me, C plus, a little bit below what I was expecting out of them to this point. They just really just need to clean up. I had really high hopes for them because of what we've seen from the Ravens defense last year. I want to just see them clean up their run attack a little bit. I think that a lot of the struggles from the running game, the Seahawks' ability to not stop the run game, is because of the linebackers. A lot of the times you just see runs go straight from the line of scrimmage immediately into the secondary, and you're basically forcing one of your corners or a safety to make a tackle that's preventing the run from being a touchdown. However, the last few games since Ernest Jones has gone here, it has been better. It was a lot better against the Rams on last Sunday. I think he's going to help a lot, and as long as they can just start filling their gaps properly and identify what's going on in the run game at the linebacking core, I think the linebackers are going to start to be able to play a lot better.
yeah, I've loved to see the Derek Hall and Boya Mafe in particular. I've loved watching. They've been doing great. I gave them a B minus. I'm gonna be completely honest. Of every single position on the team, I've paid the least attention to the linebackers, which
Fair.
doesn't necessarily mean I know nothing, but they've kind of slipped under my radar this year for like who I'm watching and paying attention to. So B minus, about as I expected. Run tackling cleaned up a little bit during the Rams game, which is great to see. And I just love to see them improve in every way. From covering up the holes to just run blocking and everything. But it's been fun to watch, as I said, especially Derek Hall and Boye Mafe, 2 players I had high expectations for coming into the season. So very excited to see them perform well.
Yeah. Looking at corner, Spoon has 51 tackles on the year, no sacks, only 1 tackle for a loss, 1 forced fumble, and no interceptions. Tariq Woolen has 18 tackles, 6 pass deflections, and 2 interceptions. Josh Jobe has 14 tackles, 4 pass deflections, and an interception. This was a hard one for me, mostly just because of how big of a role injuries have played in the cornerback room for the Seahawks this year. Spoon has really been the only consistent piece playing every game. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
think I really am encouraged by what I've saw out of Tariq Woolen this year. He looks a lot more like the cornerback we saw his rookie year than what we saw last year. Obviously he had a bit of a rough game against the Rams. He kind of got burnt, especially as the game went on. He also got mossed in a play against the Bills in the end zone. But overall, I think what we've seen out of Tariq Woolen is really good and encouraging. Um, but overall, I just give them a B minus. I think players that have have stepped up. I think Josh Jobe has played well. He's like a rookie. Like you can't hold him to an insane standard. I think he's made some plays. Obviously, picking off Josh Allen for the first time this season is an accomplishment. So for me, I'm gonna give them a B minus.
Yeah, I had them at a C, but I'm actually going to raise that, I think, I'm going to put them at a B. I would love more turnovers from the secondary, especially
Yeah,
with the amount of skill that we have. The coverage is great. It's about what I expected it to be, if not above. I would love to see more turnovers from the secondary. We've unfortunately watched a defense that has struggled to make any turnovers, fumbles, interceptions for too long. And I have had lots of hope coming into this year that would be fixed, but it hasn't changed too much this season. So um, I would love to see more turnovers from the secondary. Otherwise, they're doing well for the most part. I think Spoon's been a fantastic player this year. Woolen obviously has missed a few games, but I think he's held up his part as well. He's been beaten a couple times, notably by some top tier wide receivers, but that's to be expected for a young cornerback. Uh, where he's at right now. I mean, you can look at even somebody who's regarded as one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and Sauce Gardner is having a tough year this year as well. And
yeah,
everyone's going to have those years. Everyone's going to have those struggles in their career. Um, I think that Josh Jobe has done a great job stepping in, and he's played well in the few games that he's played as well. And a little bit of a shout out to Pritchett as well. He hasn't played for a little while, but in the times that I have seen him play, he's made some tackles in the Giants game. I know it's a while ago, but he had the only pass breakup on the defense in that game, and he was only stepping in for a few plays. He hasn't done incredible, hasn't been super solid, but he's had some moments where he's looked great. So love to see that from the youngster.
yeah. Real quick, just go through the last two here. Safeties, I gave them a C. I just expect a lot more out of Julian Love than what we've seen. His play has been really inconsistent.
Yep.
Um, Getting rid of
Yep.
Jamal and Quandre Diggs, you kind of gave him the leadership of the defense. You see that as he takes the post-game presser after every game on the defensive side. I think that he's just trying to do too much right now. He's trying to make up for other people's mistakes. And I think as other players continue to just get better at their jobs, understand where they're supposed to be, that he'll be able to sit back and just make the plays that we know that he can be. Um, Other than that, I've been really impressed by Kobe Bryant so far. I think he's played fantastically um, at the safety position. So just a shout out to Kobe Bryant. But overall, I just expect a little more out of the safeties.
Yeah, I've expected a little more out of Julian Love as well. Kobe Bryant's played well as of late. He's been a little bit rocky, but he has played well this season. I gave the safeties a B. Lots of issues, but they're playing somewhat consistently in some ways. But I would love to see a little more out of Julian Love and Kobe Bryant, but Julian Love especially being kind of a leader on this defense.
Quick little shout
Just
out.
more
Oh,
consistency from him, I guess I'll say.
yeah, I
Sorry,
got
no
you.
worries.
Quick little shout out here to the special teams and the special. Every player who's played on special teams contributes to this. I gave them an A. The only thing keeping me from an A plus was the missed extra point against the Rams. I think that's just leaving me a bit of a salty taste because we could have won that game with the made extra point. Um, but props. All of our returners look great. Averaging on average, we're having 32.1 yards per kickoff return, which is pretty incredible. They really Chenault especially has been dangerous, and he's really starting to learn when he can take the kickoff and when he just needs to let it go out of the back of the end zone. Um, and as always, Michael Dixon is just a baller, averaging almost 50 yards a
Oh,
punt and 14 punts in the side of the 20 compared to just 4 touchbacks. So just an absolute monster. He is so underrated for what he does in the field position game, and he's really actually kept us in a lot of these games, in my opinion, putting the defense in a good spot after the offense has stuttered out. So for me, special teams has been fantastic, an A grade.
Yeah, Dixon is one of the most underrated punters in the league, in my opinion, and I absolutely love just how incredibly good he is at punting. I gave this special teams an A. The point after attempts and a couple of missed field goals is the only thing holding me back as well. Although I will say I've heard quite a few fans online, even on my Kraken account that I've talked about Seahawks football with, even some people I know personally who are not happy with Jason Myers, and even a couple people who have said they want him gone and they want a different kicker based off of how he's played this year, which I was kind of like, yeah, sure, maybe. And then preparing for this podcast, I looked at his stats and was like, he's 12 for 15 and 22 for 23 on extra points. Obviously, you never want to miss extra points, but every kicker has it happen every year, minus a few exceptions. And 3 missed field goals through 15 kicks is not the end of the world, not terrible. So, not sure what some people are freaking out about with him, considering how he's been super consistent and great for us, like, all year, every year. But obviously, it's a little bit of an off year for him, but I don't think this is, like, bench Myers, get rid of Myers worthy enough. So, kind of an interesting take to hear from some people, but this special teams has been great to watch. So good to see that there's a little bit of positive there.
For sure. Switching over to the Kraken now. I'm just going to let you go to town here, man. Just go ahead, tell us what's going on in your opinion with the Kraken so far, as they've been on a bit of a skid, and just what have you seen from the Kraken since the last time we recorded?
All right, so the Kraken, as you said, on a little bit of a skid, which really sucks considering how last episode we recorded, we were pretty excited about how optimistic the team was kind of looking. I was excited just for sure. The Kraken just wrapped up a 5-game road trip, and it did not go the way that we wanted it to or needed it to. Taking just 2 of 10 available points, this sets the Kraken back and leaves us at 6th in the division. That puts us out of 8 spots. That puts us being 1 point ahead of the Anaheim Ducks and 2 points behind the struggling Edmonton Oilers. So 11 points right now, 13 for us, 13 for the Oilers, and 10 for the Ducks. It's not panic time right now, but some questions need to be asked and answered. First off, where's the offense? 6 road games and only 15 games to show for it. Remove the Habs game, and you have 4 goals. You only scored 4 goals in 5 games if you take out the Canadiens game, where you score 8 goals on a super struggling, terrible defense and rocky goaltending that the Canadiens have. It's just unacceptable offense, as well as you get shut out in 2 of those 5 games as well, which just doesn't feel good for the team, for the coaching, for the fans. So super disappointing. The way the Kraken handled the puck for the majority of the road trip was just horrendous. Like, they could barely handle the puck. They could barely beat the Sens, the Leafs, the Bruins to any loose pucks, and they couldn't corral it for longer than like a few seconds before just throwing it into another Kraken player's skates, or shooting it wide of the net, or just straight right into the goalie's chest, which seems to be a challenge that the Kraken players give themselves each week of how many times can we shoot it right to the opposing goaltender. Offense has just been simply horrible, just terrible over the past road trip, which has been very disappointing to see from a Kraken team that we believe has a lot of offensive potential. Especially since you're also seeing a bunch of players that, like Shane Wright, Matty Beniers, Ty Cartier, you know that these guys have a chance to have breakout years this year. Matty, we're looking for a bounce back year. Ty Cartier looking for a breakout year. And Shane Wright, we're looking for him to just get things going, start setting a tone for himself here in playing in Seattle. Jared McCann's heating up a little bit, so I would hopefully like to see him heat up too for that offense. But really, the Kraken were just non-existent during especially the Bruins game, having 0 shots on goal for the first 20 minutes of the game. That is a full period where you did not have 1 shot on goal. That is a problem. And the Bruins game wasn't even the most recent game we played. We went and played another game after that. So that's a major concern for me that you went an entire 20 minutes without shooting, and then you went into the second period and only had 5 shots on goal, which just was not good. I know I've said that a lot. I've used every word I can say to explain bad, but it's bad. It's terrible offense. Unbelievably inexcusable, excuse me. On the other end of the ice, though, you have a hot tender in Decord, who's getting a little help from the defense, which is the other side of this conversation, getting zero help from the offense. And while I'm not a big fan of Grubauer, he's somewhat acceptable right now. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But on the flip side of the offense, we have the defense, who is not giving Grubauer much help either. It feels a little bit like a comparison of the offensive line for the Seahawks. You have a goalie or quarterback who's playing well or at least acceptable, and the guys in front of him are just not putting in the work or just playing quite terribly and leaving him out to dry, not giving him any help whatsoever. And it just ruins your offense. It ruins in hockey, obviously, it ruins the goalie's ability to get hot and to start, feeling confident in net. The amount of times that Grubauer gets beat on the other side of the post because he can't get across fast enough, which a lot of people want to put that on Gru. You got to put that on the defense 9 times out of 10. When your goalie has to move from post to post to make a save on a player who's just sitting right behind him, that's your defense's fault. That's not on your goalie. We're getting out-physicaled, out-hustled for the puck every game. The biggest problem the Kraken defense is facing is while they're able to get out of the way of certain shots, they're either too slow to control the shot or they can't find a way to reestablish possession. So when they're on offense, especially, they are not quick enough to get out of the way of their own screens, and they're getting hit by their own shots, which is A, embarrassing, and B, not what the plan is. On defense, they're blocking shots quite well. Brandon Tanna has been great at blocking shots. Andrei Burakovsky has kind of been pretty good at blocking shots as well. I'm not going to go down the list and name every single player. I will say Matty Beniers has done a good job blocking shots as well, which is great to see from the young guy. But they just do a terrible job at locating the puck after it's hit them. They spend 3 seconds spinning in circles looking at their feet, and then another player from the opposing team just comes in and takes the puck, and that's repossession for the other team in your zone, which creates long, extensive amounts of offensive zone time for the other team and tires out your line, tires out your goaltending, and kills momentum. So they're just playing far, far, far too passive, and it's killing their ability to counterattack. So need to see some cleanup on that. We have a little bit of a bye. We play tomorrow night, but we had 2 days to rest now after a 5-game road streak. Actually, I'll talk about the power play needs some help and some work. And that's just a factor of the offense being kind of bad and not being able to get pucks into the zone. But the inability to get bodies to the net makes it difficult for shots from the blue line to be effective. You have, he hasn't been playing recently, but you have Vince Dunn. Brandon Montour has a lethal shot from the blue line, really from anywhere, but we've seen it before. He has a lethal shot from the blue line. Adam Larson's got a good clapper. Alexiak's not always accurate, but he's able to get the puck into the net, in the crease at least, from the blue line. And the inability to get bodies to the net, if the puck bounces off of the back wall, or the goaltender, or wherever, it's just been getting cleared or covered up immediately, and there's been zero offense. This is something, if you listen to the broadcasts, Edzo is screaming about it. He's always, and not literally screaming, but I can't tell you the amount of times he goes to look back at replays and pauses the replay and says, look at this. There's no one in front of the net, and we're taking shots from the blue line, and the puck is loose just like it's supposed to be, and no one's there to do it. Shout out to Jordan Eberle and Shane Wright. They are the only 2 players on the Kraken who consistently go to the net and are consistently sitting there waiting for a shot. Yanni Gord a little bit as well, but he has yet to make a play on that. Shane Wright and Jordan Eberle have both scored off of goals right in front of the net that have either gone off the back wall, off the glass, or off the goaltender himself, or off of a player out in front. And we've seen moments where the Kraken have a little bit of a scrum in front of the net from shots that are just sitting out in front. We've almost scored. A couple of times where we've gotten really unlucky, or a couple of times we just couldn't find the puck. But more bodies to the net, especially when you are a team that takes a lot of shots from the blue and plays outside and not inside on the ice. Before I continue, did you have any thoughts at all on any of this and just kind of how the offense is performing and the defense?
Yeah, I actually had a bit of a question for you. So obviously, like I'm still learning about hockey. So when you talk about, and I think a lot of our listeners might have the same question as people that are just starting to get into hockey. Um, when you talk about players not being in front of the crease, um, in front of the net, is that something that's like a schematical issue, or is that like a player issue? Like, is that coaches telling players to get in front of the net and them just not listening because they don't want to get hit by pucks, they don't want something to happen? Obviously, I would imagine when you're in front of there with those shots coming in, your risk for injury would go up. Um, so is that
Mm-hmm.
something that like the players just aren't doing that coaches are saying, or do you think that could be something that the coaches just aren't messaging down to the guys? So what are your opinions on that?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of both. I know that players a lot of the time openly express their, not a lot of the time, but sometimes openly express their worry about being in front of the net like that. It's, when you have a piece of rubber coming at you at, Brandon Montour's shot can be up to 100 miles per hour. And when that
Yeah.
thing hits you, it stings. As somebody who
Uh-huh.
hasn't been hit by a 100-mile-an-hour puck, but I have been hit by a clapper before, and it stings. And I imagine theirs hurt a lot more. So there's probably a mix of that. Schematically, I would imagine based off of how our offense is built and the breakdowns and analysis I've seen of our offense from other pages that do content like this, from our intermission report team that works with the Kraken on the Kraken Hockey Network, and from John, JT, and Edzo talking about it. I imagine our scheme is get bodies in front of the net and make plays off of a loose puck, which is why it confuses me why players are constantly not there. We're always around the outside. Or when we are there, we're not able to make a play on the puck. So I would imagine the lack of bodies in front of the net is mostly because of just I don't think it's fear of the puck, because if that's your problem, you shouldn't be a hockey player and you shouldn't be taking you should know
Yeah.
coming into the sport you're going to take some risks on injuries. It's one of the most physical sports there is out there. In some ways it's more physical than the NFL. I'm not going to say it is though, because the NFL there's contact on every play, whereas in hockey you're not getting hit, every single time you have the puck.
Okay.
Um so yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both schematic and just the team is just still figuring out how we're going to get that to work, because you also have the factor of we're trying to pass it along the sides, back up to the blue, back up to the top of the offensive zone, excuse me. And while you're doing all that passing, someone's got to just kind of sneak in there. Normally, you're going to have one person who's playing in front of the net, and then two down low and two up high. And the Kraken don't cycle as well as some teams do. And cycling is where you pass it from the bottom to the top across, which is called D to D, when you go from one defensive player on the blue line to the other. So they're not great at getting it from the bottom and then D to D and then back down on the other side of the bottom. We have a lot of times where we fumble passes, pucks go in skates. Sometimes it's just not executed well and you end up passing it back and forth for a long time and you don't even get a shot off. So it's all about just trying to get the scheme to work. And it's interesting to see if players are going to be picking it up soon, if we're going to, get our act together, or if this is going to be something we're going to struggle with for a long time to see. Hopefully that's not the
Okay.
case. So I hope that answers your question, and any fans who have questions about that, I hope that answers your guys' questions as well.
Yeah. That definitely
Um,
answered my question. And obviously, if any of you guys have questions similar to that one, feel free to submit them to us or send them to us in a DM, because we'd both be more than happy to talk more in depth about certain questions that you guys have. Um, that was a lot of negative. Do you have any positive notes for the Kraken? Anything that went well over these last few games?
I do. I have a couple notes on the bright side as well, and I was just about to get to that. Um, I think I'll save this for another time just to see how this goes, but I have another point to make about Grubauer, but that's more negative, and I'm weighing myself down with negative too much already. So I'm going to save that for next time. So everyone tune in next time for my thoughts on Philip Grubauer. But what I will say is the PK has been completely lights out. Through your 5 games, you were 4 for 4 against Montreal. You were 2 for 2 on killing penalties, by the way. 4 for 4 against the Canadiens, 2 for 2 against the Maple Leafs, 3 for 3 against the Senators, 4 for 5 against the Bruins, and unfortunately you were 2 for 5 against the Avs. But that's pretty darn good right there. That's, 9 for 9 on 3 games in a row on penalty kills is fantastic, before you finally let one in. On the other side, obviously, like I said earlier, the power play hasn't been great. You went 3 for 6 against the Canadiens. You went 0 for 3, 0 for 4, 0 for 3, and 1 for 3 in the next few games. But the PK has been incredible. So a little hat tip to Jessica Campbell, who is in charge of the power play and power kill. At least one side of this is working and is being effective. Joey Decord, playing phenomenal. Joey Decord is bringing a lot of light to this team, and once again, 2 years in a row now, is showing to be the savior of this team. He's posted a .915 save percentage with 2.76 goals allowed average, and he is currently positive 4.1 on his GSAX. I explained what that is in our first episode a little while ago. But basically, he's averaging at saving 4 goals above expected per game, which is just great to see, and that means he's making a lot of desperation saves too, which is a fun thing to watch, but not necessarily a good thing. But I talked about the defense struggling to help our goaltenders out. But he still has a winning record at 4-3-1 despite the lack of wins as of late, and is just playing phenomenal. So I'm just hoping to see some more recognition for him across the NHL, because I feel like he goes unnoticed quite a bit, but he is definitely earning that starting job. Let's see. Matty Beniers is starting to heat up a little bit, racking up 8 points in the last 7 games that he's played. As I said earlier, Jared McCann, he's in a little bit of a slump right now, but not even a few games ago, he has put up a significant amount of assists and points. He's leading the team in a lot of the stats now, which I'll get to in just a second. And then one last final thing that is kind of both on the bright side and not on the bright side. I had a lot of people ask me this week why there are trade rumors going around for Brandon Tanev and Yanni Gourde. I'm going to quickly explain that. And if you need a little bit of a further in-depth explanation, I have a video that I'm going to make permanently on my page that will talk about why this is happening. So, Vince Dunn is on the LTIR. When you're on the LTIR, your contract doesn't affect your team's cap space. It makes it so that an LTIR is long-term injured reserve. It's meant so that you can go out and get another player to replace the player who's injured without having to worry about going over the cap. So, Vince Dunn's coming back from the LTIR soon, which is great news. The bad news is that's going to put us over the cap, which is something you have to solve by a certain point of the season. I do not know what that date is yet, unfortunately. But the thought process here is Tanev is playing well, but he's being paid way too much for a fourth line forward who does not score very much and is not giving you too many assists, just a lot of physical gameplay, a lot of shot blocking, and he's, to be honest, the best penalty killer on this team. And Yanni Gourde hasn't been great this season and last season and the season before. I love that he fights and I love that he's, our pepper pot, but he's, very high in penalty minutes, and some of them are unnecessary penalty minutes. And a lot of them are times where he goes to the penalty box, but doesn't bring an opponent with him, which is really unfortunate, because sometimes if you're fighting, getting a roughing penalty, that's great. And I'd love to see it as long as you're bringing someone from the other team with you to make it 4-on-4. Or if you draw an even bigger penalty, which can happen sometimes, you give your team a 5-on-4 with a 2-minute power play, even though, and the other team gets 4 minutes total of penalty minutes. So Gourde and Tanev are on the trade block right now. We will most likely we will for sure be seeing one of them getting traded in the next week or two, possibly both of them. If both of them are traded, it's going to be interesting to see if we go out and get somebody to replace them, which is not too likely, seeing as that would probably put us back over the cap, or who's going to come up from Coachella Valley who can step up. Is it going to be names we know, such as Ryan Winterton, Logan Morrison or John Hayden maybe? Or is it going to be kind of a new face in Ben Myers or Leighton Road perhaps? I imagine it's not Road, but we'll see. To close us out here really quick, the points, the leaders for all of this Kraken statistics have gone back to last year and the year before and the year before. It's all Jared McCann. He's leading with 16 points. He's leading goals with 6. He has assist leader with 10. And his plus minus is the best on the team with 5. And as I stated before, Yanni Gord is leading the team in penalty minutes with 30, which is significantly higher than last week's episode where he was in between that 12 to 15 range. Any final thoughts on the Kraken from you before we kind of move on here?
No, I just hope they can get this thing figured out, especially coming back for a bit of a homestand here. Hopefully the 2 days off in Seattle where they could just be with their families, go practice. Hopefully that was able to just kind of help them reset mentally. But I just really hope that we can see the Kraken turn it around here. Any
Absolutely.
last thoughts
And
from you before we switch?
Yes, one more thing really quickly. Kraken fans, or anyone who really wants to see this, on the 9th of this month, give me one second while I fact check myself really quick. So that would be 2 days from when this is recorded. Let's see. So we'll be releasing this episode tomorrow. So when you guys will hear this, tomorrow on Saturday, the Kraken are hosting at 1:30 p.m. at Climate Pledge the Kraken Skills Showcase, which is super fun. Kraken players are going to be doing a mini all-star game just with themselves. Everyone does who's the fastest skater, who has the hardest shot, the most accurate shot. They'll do a bunch of drills. They'll play games with the fans around the stadium. It gives you a really good chance to meet some players, to get something signed. Tickets are only $15 a piece. I'm going to try to go. I have some personal stuff popping up that day, but I'm going to try to fudge it a little bit to get there. But it's a super fun experience that's been gone for the last 2 years, and they're bringing it back this year. So if any of you are interested in going to that, just at Climate Pledge at 1:30 on Saturday. Tickets are $15 a piece. And it's a super, super fun experience. Every team in the NHL does it, so it's good to see the Kraken back at doing it again. So that's last thought from me from the Kraken. I'll pass it back over to you.
Yeah, so I know we're a little bit over what we normally try and shoot for today, but just going to try and wrap things up here. My quick little minor league shout out. I know it's been a little bit since the Mariners minor league players, their season wrapped up just over a month ago, but I just wanted to shout out 3 guys here real quick on their awards at the end of the season. Lizardo Montes was first team all MILB, which is the minor league of the MLB. He was first team all MILB. That's over tons of players, by the way. He was also the MVP of the California League. He was rated the top MLB prospect in the California League, and he was also first team all California League outfielder. Michael Arroyo was second team all MILB second baseman, first team Northwest League second baseman. And shout out to Brock Rodden, who was the MILB Gold Glove winner for second base. He also was first team Northwest League for utility. So a bunch of other guys got awards, but congrats to everybody. They're all super deserving. It's just super cool to see how successful the Mariners minor league teams are, and just how much there is to look forward to in the future for these guys and this team. Oh.
If you passed it over to me, you cut out just a minute at the end. You wrapped up your thought, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. We're still trying to figure out this technology a little bit, guys, and we've had a couple of hiccups a little bit, and occasionally one of us cuts out for the other. So, unfortunately, this one caught us between a pause.
My
minor league shout out. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I also live in a college apartment where there's tons of people living all around me, all on the Wi-Fi at the same time. So most of the time, the technology stuff comes from my end. So if I ever cut out or technical difficulties, just know that college dorm Wi-Fi is not the best.
Which is funny because you guys probably spend a lot of time on your computers trying to write stuff and watch videos and research and stuff. So that's kind of funny that it works out that way. Let's see. My minor league shout out is Berkeley Catton. He's playing on the Spokane Chiefs in the WHL. He is the Kraken's high pick draft pick from the most recent draft. He's sitting currently at 6 goals, 20 assists for 26 points through 16 games played. He got the C this year, that being the C on the jersey, symboling that he is the captain of the team, which is the first time he's been given a captain role. He has been an alternate captain before, but he's leading his team pretty well. He's got the highest plus minus on the team at 5, and he's been a positive offensive piece for this Spokane Chiefs team that is trying to have yet another successful year in the WHL. So super excited to see somebody who will potentially be on the Seattle Kraken roster in the next 3 to 5 years, pick up a big role with responsibility, and just play super well for his team. So, yeah, that's my minor league shout out. I know we got some some news of some surrounding sports here that you're going to close us out with. What happened? What else happened around Washington here?
Yeah, so a little bit of Mariners news here since we recorded our last episode. The Mariners are rumored to be in on Hae-Sung Kim, a 25-year-old left-handed second baseman from the Korean Baseball League. He had an OPS of 841 and also had 30 stolen bases last season. So it'd be super awesome if the Mariners could get him. He's going to be pretty cheap coming over from Korea. Really, that's the equivalent of playing in AAA. So take that with a grain of salt, his stats, but also a lot of guys have come over and had success coming from the KBL. UW football got back on the right track. They improved to 5-4 after they beat USC at home over the weekend. They keep their hopes of going to a bowl game alive, and they will head into number 6 in the country, Penn State. Unfortunately, Washington got scheduled for the Penn State wideout game. Honestly, it's going to take a miracle for the Huskies to pull this one out, but Penn State, in my opinion, is very overrated. They don't have a win over a ranked team this year. So maybe the Huskies can pull something out and pull off some chaos against Penn State this weekend. WSU football was on a bye this weekend as they prepare to play at home against Utah State on Saturday and keep their hopes of a possible college football playoff berth on the line. At 7-1, they were ranked number 21 in the college football playoff rankings. That was good for the third highest non-Power 4 team, sitting only behind number 12 Boise State and number 18 Army. And as many of you guys know, the highest ranking not Power 4 team will be receiving an automatic qualifier to the college football playoff. So really, for the Huskies, if Boise State and Army both lose a game and the Cougars manage to win out, they'll most likely be receiving an automatic bid to the playoffs, which would be awesome. UW basketball started off their season with a 79-73 win against UC Davis, led by a strong performance from the transfer Gray Osborne, who played all but 2 minutes in the game. He had 15 points. He went 4 for 8 from the field, but he also had 17 rebounds, 6 steals, and 2 blocks out of a big man. It's kind of crazy. They will look ahead as they play on the road against Nevada on Saturday night for their second game of the season. WSU basketball also started their season this week with the win against Portland State at home, led by a strong performance by senior guard Cedric Coward, who had 23 points on 7 for 12 from the field and 3 for 7 from 3. He also collected 12 rebounds, which as a guard is crazy impressive, and had 3 assists. They will look ahead as they play Bradley at home tomorrow night. Gonzaga basketball started off the season at home against number 8 ranked in the country Baylor, and they absolutely embarrassed them, winning 101-63. They were ranked number 6 to start the year as they look to push for another WCC championship and finally win the NCAA tournament. They'll have a little bit of another tough game as they play Arizona State at home on Sunday. And finally, the Reign wrapped up their season losing 3-2 to the Orlando Pride. They will now look to wash away their season and focus their attention towards the offseason as they look to bounce back after what was really just an abysmal season from the Seattle Reign this year. But, yep, that's a bit of what happened around Seattle for sports. Anything you want to mention about any of these teams before we wrap up here?
No, I think everything that we've talked about here is just about my thoughts on them, and yeah, just wrap up this episode. Unfortunately, guys, we weren't able to get to questions this week, partially because we forgot to ask if you guys had any questions. But that's on us. And I know that you guys love getting some questions on our stories midway through the week, and we would love to keep answering those questions for you guys. So thank you guys so much for listening. As always, we love doing this. This is a super awesome episode, and we are looking forward to some big weeks from each one of our teams. So thank you guys so much for listening.
Don't forget, go Cougs. Go Cougs, baby.